Now realizing that this should have been the front picture for this video. That always happens after you do the if you do live videos, after you do the little thumbnail, something happens that's organic while you're waiting and you're just like, oh, I wonder what I'm gonna do when the thing comes up, and then you're like, oh, this is the thing that I should have done in the first place. Okay, let's get going. So anyways, this video is done by an INFJ, and I'm going to tell you why we ramble. I'm not so much going to do a lot of rambling myself today. If you're interested in those kind of videos where INFJs ramble, which is most of them, I'm going to tell you why we ramble and why we both do and do not mean to do. So there's quite a couple reasons, actually. The first thing that I have to tell you is that we're not rambling. As INFJs, we find you so special and so interesting. Not special in that you can't walk and chew gum kind of way, which may or may not be true, I don't know. But it's that we find you special as a person. We find you interesting. We find you to be the most interesting person on the planet while we're talking to you. And we're paying attention to you and only you, unless we're doing something very special with you. We're relaying information. Sharing information is the biggest gift that any INFJ can give you or would want to give you. And if you're wondering right now what an INFJ is, I encourage you to look in the description of this video, which I'm going to upload afterwards, which will have a link to a couple websites that you can look at and have fun with. There's this self-diagnostic tool where basically you can test your personality and find out which one of these archetypes you fit into. But if that's only if you don't know what an INFJ is. So let's say that you have a girlfriend, maybe you have a boyfriend, maybe you have a close friend, or maybe the close friend, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, that loved one is you. And you just found out you're an INFJ. And now you're wondering, because you've been looking up these videos on YouTube, is it true? Do you actually ramble? Well, yeah, you do, more than you think. So here's the thing. Here's the first reason why INFJs ramble. We care about you. We want to make sure that you have all of the pertinent information, which leads me to 2. All information is interesting, so long as there's like a parent file. Let's think of it from a technical point of view. So a technical point of view, let's say you're dabbling in computer sciences and you know about these things called Merkle trees, or maybe you know about data blocks or even data chains. So a data chain isn't a single piece of data. It's data that relates back and correlates back to another piece, and they all have pointers. So there's like a connection, there's a chain, hence the metaphorical name, data chain. So each thing is interesting maybe on its own, but it's so much more interesting. It's rendered so much more interesting by how it's related to the other data in the chain. Can you guess why it is that INFJs ramble? We find all the information interesting, but more importantly, we find it important because of how it correlates to the other piece of information. There is no one-sided coin. There's no one size fits all. Seriously, if you're buying a pair of leggings right now, know this, there is no one size that fits all. And if you're interested in a really cute pair of leggings, you might want to check out another link I'm going to put in the bottom of this video. I just started designing my own clothes and I really love it. But here's the point. As an INFJ, A, we care about you and so we ramble, but then B, we care about making sure that you get the important information, which to us leads us to see all of the information, or 1, 2, 3. All of the information is important information to an INFJ because we're passionate about it. And we want to make sure that you feel passionate about something too, that you feel like there was some sort of good reason to show up today. We want to make sure that your experience in our conversation, not our conversation, but our conversation was worth something. Every moment that we have a conversation with you, we realize that we're taking up your time and we want to make sure that it's special, that it's something that you want to come back to, and that it means something to you. So as an INFJ, A, we care about you, so we want to make sure we give you the most important information, which is B, all the information. And we want to make sure we give you all of the most important parts of the information, which is back to that whole Merkle tree idea. It's the next block up. You're not going to understand why the next block up exists if you don't know about the chain going this way. You need to know why it's going up and how each thing correlates to each thing. Can you see why ramble. We don't actually think that it's rambling. We're just worried that you're not going to get all of the best bits of information. The best way to make sure that you get the best parts of information is to give you all of the information. So that's information overload, right? But then there's a whole other reason why INFJs ramble. And it's because, honestly, we get lost in thought. We're saying things out loud about the data chain and how it's going this way, but in actuality, we're thinking about the next step ahead because we're preparing it. We want to make sure that you have not only the best information, but that we've relayed it to you the best way possible. Because if we give you some information and it's half-assed or it's not good enough or it's confusing to understand, then it may put you off of something that it might turn out that you're incredibly passionate about. You might not discover that you're really, really good at falconry if we don't tell you everything about falconry. Hello. So we have to tell you every little thing about every little thing just so that we don't rob you of something terribly interesting and important that could add something, nay, splendiferous to your life. Yes, you are meant to be a reenactor at some Renaissance fair, or maybe president. And how can we be the ones to tell you what you should or shouldn't be, or how good you would or wouldn't be at it? Well, if we only tell you one piece of information, that's as good as doing the same thing. We're controlling it. We're keeping something from you. You need to know about why toothpicks were used in the 15th century in Japan, and therefore why there is a story called The Toothpick Warrior. Only maybe you don't. But we're not the ones to decide that. We're going to let you decide that, or rather, we're going to let your attention span decide that. Most people are not INFJs. INFJs are only 1% of the population. So we already know you're not going to remember all this stuff. And we already know that you don't need to remember all this stuff. But we don't know which stuff you need to know in the first place. We don't know what we were introducing to you versus what we weren't. So the best thing that we can possibly do for you is give you all the information as thoroughly and completely and as passionately as possible and as quickly as possible, because we don't know when that clock is going to come up and you're not going to be hearing anything anymore. For instance, it's been 7 minutes. 4 people have been in and out of this video during the time of this live recording, which is live in your area and timestamp. And that's okay, because that's all the information that they need to know. They knew the information that they needed to hear, that they wanted to hear, and we're going to let them hear it. And if they miss out on it because they left or their attention span stopped, that's not our fault, unless we're on the younger side. See, younger INFJs, as in teenage INFJs, as in preteen INFJs, as in little kid INFJs, we're thinking in a very sort of tunnel vision kind of way. It's very myopic. We're thinking, they're standing here with us now. They asked us to repeat ourselves. They don't know anything about this subject. They might never hear about this subject again. I am the ambassador of this subject. I have to impart all of the important information, which we already covered, is all the information. And I need to do it as quickly and as passionately as possible so I don't lose them and so they get all the information they need to know. Because for all we know, they're supposed to be ballerinas. And then it turns out that actually they already have a love and they're hockey players and they couldn't be less interested. Which, in case you're not American, you're wondering, like, there's no interest left in the interest bucket? Yes, that's exactly what we mean when we say we couldn't be less interested, and I'm sorry for the pointing. There's a lot of gesticulation happening today. The truth is, INFJs care about you so much that they're doing it to their own detriment, because one of the other things we're always wondering, and one of the reasons why we end up rambling, is because we get distracted. And when we come back down from the top of the Merkle tree, which I've already mentioned like a billion times already, once we come back from the top of that wazoo, whatever, once we come back from the top of that information tree, our eyes literally start to trickle back down to you. We lock eyes, we realize that we're about to lose you, and we feel so sad. Oh no, we didn't do well enough. They're not going to get all this information. I don't know when they're going to ever have the patience to do this again. What if they've lost all their information because they lost all of their patience so quickly? I didn't present this well enough. You get this weird feeling like you're performing all the time, even in a regular conversation. So you speak faster and you get more animated and you get more pumped up and you start gesticulating more and you're doing all these things to make sure that they pay attention, and you see their eyes starting to wonder and you realize, While your eyes were up, their eyes were on their phone. They've already left. They're coming back in. So now you're wondering what information they had. See, it's not just about worrying about the other person, worrying about that they get all the information that they need, that they don't lose out on that amazing circus performer thing, collaboration or Cirque du Soleil, whatever it was that they were meant to do in life, that maybe it was your charge, maybe God, maybe whoever it was speaking through you, or maybe you are the universe and someone's pushed you forward. Maybe it's an ancestor of theirs and they need you to tell them all about baking without your hands. Whatever it is, you're worried that they're never ever going to look into it again. And now you're also worried about being hurt, because once they start talking again, it's usually to interrupt you and tell you that you've been rambling, or to ask you why you've been rambling, or to ask you what the point is. The more polite non-INFJs will ask you, so how does this correlate back to, geisha? And you'll say, oh my God, you haven't been listening. If you don't know how this correlates back to geisha, you will never understand the Japanese sword folding method, and therefore you are not going to take that Aikido class. So you're going, oh, they didn't listen at all. They heard one word, they didn't hear it again. They don't value my time. They don't value me. They don't value the information that I import, because they don't value the source of the information, which is me, so they think. And you get so hurt that you get wrapped up in the next time. Well, the next time you talk to somebody else, you're not going to do all that research. Or the next time you talk to someone else, you're not going to get that animated. So then there's the next thing that a lot of INFJs do. Another reason, and the last reason, why INFJs start rambling, called autopilot. You don't know how much of your time or emotion or joy or hope that someone's actually going to listen you should really be investing in this conversation. Not because you don't know how much you should be investing in them, but because you don't know how much they're actually going to listen, how much they're going to give a crap, how much they're going to do any sort of information gathering on their own afterwards, whether or not they're going to take any of it seriously, or, oh, it's just so-and-so being zany again. You don't know how they're going to react. So instead, you start, it's sort of, oh, okay, there's the corner. And so in the Joseon dynasty period, there was actually quite a lot of pottery that was made and put into special, almost like a sort of special Olympics thing they had back then, only actually it was a very special competition to be chosen by the Chinese emperor at the time, because he would monetarily back them and also begin production in China and through their territories, which at the time didn't encompass all of the area that we know as China, but they were constantly conquering. And actually, they owned other places that we don't see today as being China. And actually, the areas that we do see as being China, such as Taiwan and Tibet, was originally self-governed, meaning they were populated by indigenous people long before the conquering people that actually came from the African continent that settled the area we know as China and would therefore also recognize as the Chinese. And also, more importantly, you can find evidence of this along with beautiful pieces of pottery, not just your regular flute-shaped vases, in many children's books as well, which are actually semi-historical. Also known as, yes, semi-historical. That means historical fiction, meaning that it's spanning a character who's set in a specific time period, and a lot of details are accurate. However, the character itself or themselves did not indeed actually exist, although it is easily hypothesized that they could have existed considering the time period and the details provided. In fact, you could even say they were a sort of template that we can absolutely assume it existed. For instance, Tree Year, in a very famous child novel that actually got many, many awards, including the Newbery Award, and later on a sort of Peace Prize Award, which is technically related to the Newbery Award. Actually, it was about a character named Tree Year, and he was in Korea at the time, and he was very poor, and well, yeah, anyways, it's called A Single Shard. You should check it out. I don't know if you're interested in any of this. That's what it comes down to. I don't know if you're interested in any of this. You stop yourself because we've already gone on to books now. We've gone on to the Newbery Award. We've gone on to China. We've gone on to areas that China had at the time settled or was warring or was busy trying to settle in the 15th century. We didn't start off there. We're going off onto different tangents through you or through the listener, and now we're wondering, is it that they're interested in this other thing that we've gotten onto because they actually redirected us in that position, or is it that they're much more interested in the parent file, the very top of the tree, that big shiny star at the top of the tree? Is it that they're actually very interested in that and they want to hear all the information that sort of trickles down? They want to get into that data stream? Or is it really just that they like it when we tell stories? A lot of INFJs are really good at telling stories because we remember all of the details, and we don't always remember them with perfect accuracy. For instance, the stuff that I was just rambling off, that was both correct and yet needs a little bit of tweaking here and there. Because I'm saying that because I haven't looked up information on that in like the past 6 months. So I know that some of that is a little bit off, and I apologize to any other, actual historian or amateur historian like me who's out there that loves all of this sort of information that I was just talking about. But that's what ends up happening. We give information, we share it, we check back in. What if that information or the way we were imparting information was interesting to you? Because that tells us whether or not we should go on. That's something that happens to the older INFJ. So what this all boils down to is you as a listener. One great thing that you can do, the best thing that you can do with your INFJ girlfriend, with your INFJ boyfriend, with your INFJ wife, husband, lover, best friend, parent, cousin, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever it is, very politely try to interrupt them at the very beginning and tell them something that might seem totally off the cuff to you. Just go ahead and tell them, I find such and such that you just mentioned really interesting and I want to know more about it. Or even say something like, that's not usually something I would be interested in or that I would be into, but I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. If you say that, that tells them the honest truth. And once they see you starting to zone out, you're going to offend people much less. And in fact, they're going to come back to you. They're going to check in earlier rather than rambling through or trying to speak faster or trying to put more energy into it. And they're just going to ask you up front, is this sort of what you imagine? Is this what you're actually interested in? Did you want to know about something else? Or, hey, did you know about this subject that correlates to that subject? Because then they can jump giant blocks in the data chain and go on to some other information. Because the truth is, all information and all subject matter is really connected. So maybe just as like a suggestion, maybe they start talking about different ideas of creation myths and the universe. And then they sort of take a sidestep into this alley of mysticism and interest and art. And they start talking about different people's perceptions of the galaxy, of the world, of the space that we live in, and how it is perceived and communicated through art. Maybe you are interested in art and you are not interested in creation myths, but you do find this whole galaxy art perceived, what did they just say, to be interesting. It's your job as the non-INFJ while you're sitting there, if you really care about that INFJ and you want to get really close to that INFJ, to not stop them, but to ask very politely if you could interrupt them for one moment, and then pinpoint that thing that you find really interesting and tell them that you find it interesting, or tell them that you think that's fascinating, or you think that that's weird, or you think that it's odd, that you have a question about it. Now, this might sort of rankle them, especially if they're not actually an INFJ and it turns out they're INFP. But at the same time, it's going to prove to them that you're doing the most important thing that you can possibly do for an INFJ type. You're doing the most loving thing and the most considerate thing. You're paying attention to them, and you're paying attention to the amount of love and passion they put in to gathering this information for you and bringing it to you. And you're putting as much effort and as much love and consideration into their presentation and their sharing information with you as they were when they were bringing this gift of information and joy to you, because that's what it is to INFJs. Information is joy, it's beauty, it's alive, and they want you to know all about it, and they want to share it with you. And if you don't want to share it, the most loving and best thing that you can do for that INFJ is just let them know up front, I'm actually really not interested in the Wild West and how they nailed coffins. I'm really sorry. And then they can say, oh, well, no, it's not so much about, I wasn't going to tell you about how they used to nail the coffins. I was just going to tell you why there's this whole dead ringer thing. And I just thought you might like it because you're interested in the Wild West. Okay, I can listen to that for a second, you say. The truth is, all you need to really do in order to make an INFJ like you more is to show your appreciation of how much they are sharing with you and how much time and effort they put into procuring the information to share with you and how they're sharing all that passion for you. And the best way to do that isn't to ignore them and then check back in to see if they got to the point. It's not to ignore them and then say at the very end, you know what, I'm actually really not interested in the history of spurs and why they look like pentagrams. You don't have to say that. What you can say instead is, I'm just not really in that space right now or that area of interest right now. Just tell them up front, this is a little bit much for me right now, or I'm not really able to take in complicated information right now. Just have to get in there and share it and be honest, because the dishonesty of ignoring and then coming back to tell them that you ignored them, that's a very, very, very good way to alienate them and to hurt them, so that now they associate disappointment, waste of time, waste of information, which is the most important thing to them, and another person that led them on or lied to them by pretending to listen. All that will be rolled up into you. That's what the INFJ will see. If they see you at the end of this thing that they've prepared, and then you go, you know what? How about them Broncos? And they go, I thought that we were talking about broadswords. And you go, no. Or you say, hey, remember Nike? That's cool. We're not going to take that as you feel awkward because you don't know about any of that information or that kind of stuff and you have nothing to share. We're going to take that as you didn't care. And you didn't care about us, the INFJ, enough to tell us up front. And in fact, you found us entertaining like some sort of a court jester, a court jester, and you used this as like a commercial until something more important came up. It just makes us feel used. So, in short, INFJs are rambling because they care about you and because there's so much information. They want to make sure that you get all the information, the entire wealth of it, totally intact so that you can choose what to do with it. And also are a little bit worried about being hurt and being used for information or being used as a sort of commercial before that person you actually want to or that thing you actually want to do comes up. And they're protecting themselves by talking as fast as possible or as dramatically as possible in an effort to make sure that you actually pay attention and receive their gift without ignoring them and walking away and really disappointing them and hurting their feelings and proving to them, because this is something that INFJs are always wondering, proving to them that they should stay alone. If you want an INFJ to like you, to love you, to pay attention to you, you need to help them associate a feeling of being heard, gratification, and a feeling of being appreciated, which appreciation for us equals friendship and love. The only way to do that is to be upfront when they start speaking about something really excitedly. Pick on the one thing that you find interesting, tell them that you find that interesting, And when they start to go on to another block of information that seems slightly related but not really, tell them up front that you would really love to hear more about block A, the thing that actually interests you. Don't let them ramble in an effort to try and appease you or help you like them or maybe show you love when in fact you're showing them total disconnect. All right, so that is about INFJ's rambling. And if you stayed all the way through, you know you did. You know you did. I love you, man. I love you. All right. I hope this helps you with your INFJ loved one. And go ahead and check out the links I'm going to put in the description underneath this video below. And don't forget to ask any questions if there's something that you'd like to hear me talk about. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay well. Bye-bye.